I had my Bible and I was coming home and I knew I was going to have to preach when I got home. So I was just thumbing through it. And the man next to me looked at me. He says, "Oh, you're one of those."
One of those.
And I kind of looked at him. I started laughing. I said, "Well, what do you mean one of those?" He said, "Oh, you're one of those Bible thumpers. You really think that's true, don't you?" And I looked at him. I said, well, who are you then? If I'm one of those, then what are you? He said, "Oh, well," he's a professor. He's a professor at a college. And he was telling me all this stuff. He says, "Really," he said, "the difference between you and me is I'm an intellectual, and you're just an emotional person caught up in this so-called faith thing." And I just kind of looked at him and I said, "Really?" I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, if you're so right and I'm so wrong, why is it I'm happy and I'm not trying to look to have arguments with people and you are? And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I'm just trying to correct you." I said, "Really?" I said, "So let me ask you this. What do you teach in school?" So he's telling me what he's teaching in the subjects he's in his department that he's in. And he's head of his department. I said, "That's great. Let me talk to you, but let me tell you what I know about that." He looked at me and said, "Okay." I said, "I know absolutely nothing about that. So I don't know if you're teaching the truth or not teaching the truth." And he said, "Well," I took my Bible, I said, "Have you read this Bible?" He said, "No." I said, "Shut up." We're on the plane. He looks at me, he goes, "Excuse me?
Yeah.
Who are you?" I said, "No." I said, "You're a teacher. If I tried to talk to you about something I don't know that in the field that you are studied and you've mastered in, you would immediately know how wrong I am and you think how foolish I am. So here you are who never read the Bible for yourself.
Yeah.
But you're sitting here trying to tell me about something you know nothing about. So reality is you're not much of an intellectual. You're just a prejudiced bigot." And he looked at me he says, "I should be mad at you," but he says, "You know what?" He says, You're right.
You're right.
He says, "I'm going to have to read that book before I complain anymore." I said, "Well, thank you very much."